So Trish, what I want to do is I want to give you some names of individuals. And I'd like to see if from those names, if you can identify what are their passions.
I didn't know there'd be a test today.
Yes. So this is a little test. How about the Apostle Paul?
I'm not doing well on Bible trivia today.
That's okay. Okay, how about this one? Mother Teresa.
That's a much easier one. Mother Teresa, all about peace and love and kindness towards our fellow man.
Yeah, how about Bono?
Drums.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the Called2B Podcast, where we seek to empower everyday believers to discover and live out their authentic calling in Christ to be a greater blessing in our world today. I'm Reverend Dr. Travis Guzzi. I'm the Executive Director of Wellness and Coaching for the Southeastern District of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. I'm also an ICF Certified Life and Executive Coach and a Gallup Strengths Coach. And it is wonderful having all of our viewing and listening audience joining us for this Called2B Podcast. And I want to welcome once again Trish Freshwater, my co-host here to the Called2B studio.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, depends on when you're listening. So used to saying good morning. But yes, we are here today and excited to jump back in and get things rolling for our next podcast.
Yeah. You know what gets me is when I used to do worship services during the Lent and Advent season, and we have our Wednesday evening, I'd say good morning to people because that's usually when I'm used to seeing them. So, you know.
Well, I do it all the time. And so I'll even go into a meeting at like 3 p.m. I'm like, good morning. How is everyone? They're like, it's afternoon. I'm like, it's been a long day. Just work with me.
Yeah. Well, for our listening and viewing audience, you'll notice that one of our co-hosts is not with us, the Rev Kev, Kevin Scott. He's taking a little time to kind of spend with his family, get some things in order there with the move that they had. So we want to wish Kevin and his family all the best as they get ready for a very busy season coming up, the season of Advent and Christmas. How are you doing? So I have an important question to ask you. Are you one of those people that start celebrating Christmas before Thanksgiving, or do you like wait till the day that Thanksgiving's done and then you roll into Christmas?
So November 1st, Halloween comes down and Christmas goes up.
Oh, you're one of the early ones.
I am, but this year we're a little behind. We've had a lot going on in our home, and so I went out and did a little shopping with my daughter last weekend, and we saw lots of Christmas stuff set up, and we were both drawn to so many things. And so she came home with a small tree for her room. I found some the little gnomes. Anybody into the little gnomes? Like, I've just really gotten into them. So I picked up a handful of those and set up a little Christmas tree that I had easy to access that's now set up in my living room. But the real big push will come this year after Thanksgiving, just because we've been so busy. But usually we're decorated usually by now.
Wow. See, I'm one of those traditionalists. Like I have got to get my turkey done. Then the next day, we can start playing Christmas music. We can start decorating, but nothing beforehand. It's Halloween, Thanksgiving, then Christmas.
I've always loved the season, and my daughter's birthday is usually the week of Thanksgiving. So after she was born, I made a very clear decision that we would always save Christmas for after her birthday so that we had Thanksgiving, then we would celebrate her birthday and then move into the next season. But she very quickly decided, no, Mom, I want Christmas for my birthday. And so I've let her lead all these years. Yeah. And so we have always decorated early because she wanted it all.
Well, that's good. Well, every family has their approach and their tradition. Yep. No judgment zone here in the Called2B Podcast. So anyway, hey, Trish, why don't you set the table for us of what our podcast focus is going to be today?
Christmas is a great lead-in, as that could be considered a passion of mine.
True.
We are today going to talk about passions and how they fuel our living out our calling in love and service to others, not just in our churches, but in our communities, our homes, our work, wherever we may be.
Yeah. So this is going to be a great podcast because passion is so important. And without it, it's hard to accomplish anything great in life. But before we dive into our topic, I just want to encourage all of you with the Called2B Podcast that if you, as a listening and viewing audience, like this podcast, make sure you share it with somebody. But also, we need you to like and subscribe, especially on our YouTube channel. It helps with the algorithm so that more people can find the Called2B Podcast and be blessed by our content that we share. With that, let's dive into our topic of passion. And let me start off by asking you, Trish, why is passion so important? And in your perspective, how does somebody find their passion?
So passion is something that really is almost like the energy that drives you and leads you towards the things that you enjoy. And that's probably the key part is passions are often things you enjoy, things that give you meaning. And trying to find them is really easy. You just look around at what are the things you enjoy doing? What are the things that make you energized and make you want to continue to do the things that you're working on? If you don't really like doing it, if you're dreading having to do things, those are not your passions.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you work kind of in HR with different organizations and companies. When you see somebody, an employee who doesn't have a passion for the work they do, what do you see as the outcome in their everyday work?
Sure, they are going to be less engaged. So we at my company right now, we're right in the middle of our employee engagement survey. And certainly a lot of things play into people's responses to those surveys. It could be, company related, boss related. But generally, if you enjoy your work, it is something that you really feel passionate about, it's something that drives you, that you feel you can make a difference in, then you're going to be much more productive and you're going to be more eager to take on projects and move the needle for the company.
Yeah. And somebody who's not passionate, what's that look like?
They are often getting the low performance management scores. They're being counseled. They're being asked to seek out assistance, and really, those individuals are struggling. They come to work. They don't enjoy their job. They're going to have chronic absenteeism. They're just not going to be interested in being part of what they're doing because there's no passion. And you think about the things that you don't like to do in life, and the things you avoid, then that's not your passion.
Yeah, yeah. And you can see somebody who's not passionate versus somebody who really is. And you can't be passionate for somebody. It's got to be something internal inside of them.
Yeah, and passionate people show up. They're eager. They're so happy to be part of whatever it is they're working on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's take a deeper dive into this. So, biblically, I think a lot of times we've got to kind of address passion, because a lot of Christians might think of passion as being, those bad, godless passions, the passions of the flesh, like Titus 2 warns us to flee from ungodly passion. I think a lot of times we approach it that way. But I think we also could look at it from the perspective that there are good godly passions. I mean, just consider for a second, I'm going to share a verse here that just about every Christian in the world should know. You see it at football games, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. Now, the word passion is not in here, but talk about a passionate God. His passion for his creation, his passion for us, that he loved us so much that he would give Jesus. And when we consider the life and the ministry of Jesus, what do we call the most significant moment as he is going to the cross and suffering for our sins to reconnect us to this God who loves us so much? We call it the passion.
Right.
And so passion is really, there can be, yes, sinful passions, but there can be good, godly passions. I even like this definition. Again, it's not the word passion, but I think it's a related word, enthusiasm. In the Greek, means to be filled with God. And I think that's a great image.
I love that.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, to be filled with God, to be enthusiastic, and to feel all of that coming through you in everything that you're doing. Enthusiasm's got a whole new perspective.
Yeah. And when I think about, especially when Luther taught on vocation, there was really a great book, an author that I found, Gina Edward Veith. And in his book, God at Work, he writes this. He says, what do you want to be is indeed a good question. But what you are is in many ways given. Even your wants, your desires, your dreams, your choices are a unique function of who you are. So sometimes passions can be found, passions can be developed, but in a lot of ways, the passions you have are part of God's gifting and his design in your life as well.
100%. And I think that's something that most people forget or maybe don't pay attention to, is that we were given our talents and the things that we are going to be passionate about. And it's up to us to nurture them and grow them and to really harness what we can do with them. And any parent can probably relate that when you see your children, you can easily see what their natural talents are, what their passions are. And in my daughter's case, from the time she could walk, all she wanted to do was care for people. And I'm seeing that play out in her teenage years. She is going to be a caregiver in some way. That is her talent. It is her passion. It is what gives her the most joy in everything that she does. Maybe that's another key word is joy.
Yeah.
What do you find joy in? And how does that, pull all the words together. That joy gives you that enthusiasm, which then translates into that passion.
Yeah. And I think that's what you raise is an important thing is as we live out our callings as parents, a lot of times we have passions and we seek to pour our passions into our children. So my wife and I are big NBA fans, and actually our son's name is all inspired by NBA references. That was all my wife, by the way, not me. So we, obviously kind of had a passion. Maybe our son would be athletic and play sports. Furthest thing from the truth, our son Kendall is not that he's not athletic. Just has no passion for it, though. He can run. He's a good rock climber. He's kind of a muscular, lean guy, but he just doesn't have passion for sports. His passions lie in other places, music, video production, graphic design. He's artistic. He's creative. So what do you do as a parent? Do you say, no, you're going to have my passions and I'm going to pour it in and make sure you be like me? Or do we seek to draw out what God already has poured into somebody?
I think we seek to draw out. And it goes back to, like you said, we are given, it's almost like we think about the ingredients. We've talked about that before. And you have certain ingredients in you that lead you to have those passions and the things that you are going to excel at.
Yeah.
The things that are going to give you meaning in life. And we really need to embrace those versus what other people want for us to do.
Yeah, because it's really going to lead to success in life.
And happiness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to find a career. You want to have a job that you're passionate about. Yes, you also, by the way, need to be gifted and talented at it with the gift of your personality, with the gift of your talents, which we're going to look at in our next podcast. Passion can't be all of it. For example, I don't know if you used to watch American Idol back in the day, but there are some people who are very passionate about singing, but they don't have the talent that matches.
I've seen a few of those episodes.
Yeah, and that's where you get the brutal takedowns from Simon Cowell. It's like, well, I'm glad your parents like your singing, but nobody else does. So while passion is important, and really you can't accomplish anything worthwhile without it, it also has to be matched by talent and the gift of your personality, and it's kind of that all-encompassing together.
It's really important to have that match. Kind of like your son. I would have loved to have been a world-class gymnast, but did not go that path. That was not where I was headed in life. I had too many injuries, and it just was not going to be. Even though I had the passion for it, those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, Nadia Comaneci was everything. Yeah. Everything. I read all the books, I watched all the shows, all the movies, everything. But the passion was there, but the ability was not. And so we have to recognize that and choose, okay, what is the next thing? Where do our passions really take us with the skill and pair it up?
So I think it's important to remember not every passion will turn into a career. But if you can find a passion that you can turn into a career, matching your gifts and your personality, that's where you're going to start.
There's
doing
that saying, find a job doing something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's right. Or something to the effect.
That's right.
So and I believe in that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Well, the image I think about when it comes to our design is, your God-given talents are kind of like the design of your car. Are you a sports car? Are you a 4x4 truck that can go off roads? By the way, my dream car right now is the new Ford Broncos. With the Sasquatch package and the big tires, that's kind of, if I could get my dream car, that'd be it right now. But so the car, the design determines how its functionality, where you drive. But really, what I see passion is like the gas in the tank. And if you don't have gas, you're not going anywhere. Or we might, in kind of today's terms, think also in terms of Tesla. You better make sure you got a good charge, and you better find a charging station so that you can get charged up again.
Absolutely. And also you need to plan.
That's right.
So you don't end up on the side of the highway with a dead car.
Yeah. So you need to be able to fuel yourself with your passion. There's a great quote here I'd like to share with our listening and viewing audience. This is from John Maxwell, and he writes on passion, and he says, passion has great power. It is an intense emotion, a compelling action, a strong devotion to some object, activity, or concept. Passion is the starting point for all achievement. Passion is the energy of our soul. Just a great quote. So, Trish, what I want to do is I want to give you some names of individuals. And I'd like to see if from those names, if you could identify what are their passions.
I didn't know there'd be a test today.
Yes. So this is a little test. King Solomon, what would you say his passion was?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'll give you this one. Obviously.
Well, I'm going to go back to, so Team Solomon, we look at Ecclesiastes, and the Solomon's quote, our comfort dog, for those who don't know, his quote
By the way, an upcoming podcast from Called2B here soon.
Yes, we should. We're going to have a little star on our hands. But one of the things that we talk about with him is his quote, which talks about he, being God, makes all things beautiful in their time. And so I look to that towards Solomon, is looking at things becoming beautiful in their time, but I'm sure that may not be completely related to his passion.
Yeah, Solomon, he really had a pursuit of wisdom. That was kind of, so we get Proverbs come from him. Also a pursuit to want to build a house for God, the temple of the Lord. That was his father's passion, but it was Solomon who fulfilled that. How about the Apostle Paul?
I'm not doing well on Bible trivia today.
That's okay. Well, we think of the Apostle Paul. For him, it was mission work. It was that not just the Jews, but the Gentiles would know the promises of Jesus. So led him, could you imagine going on all those missionary journeys back in Roman times with all the trials and tribulations along the way and the persecutions? If you don't have a passion for that, you're not going to.
And a dash of bravery.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, how about this one? Mother Teresa.
That's a much easier one. Mother Teresa, all about peace and love and kindness towards our fellow man.
Yeah, and especially the less fortunate, the untouchables in India that we think about. How about Billy Graham?
He was just passionate about God and religion and sharing that with others.
Yeah, especially his crusades and helping people to come to know Jesus. How about Martin Luther King Jr.?
Equality.
Yeah, that's an easy one. How about Steve Jobs?
Technology and simplicity in technology. That was really his motion or position. Not just so much the technology itself, but keeping it simple.
Yeah. How about Bono?
Drums. Drums and his music.
Yeah. And also, too, I think of him in terms of a lot of the work of AIDS in Africa.
Yes.
And the campaigns that he's done with that. He definitely has a compassionate heart towards that as well. So we can see that, there are things that drive you. I know that in my doctoral work, when it came to my dissertation, they flat out said, if you are not passionate for your topic, you're not going to finish it. And it took me 6 years to work on my dissertation, and there were a lot of times that I wanted to quit. And there were two things that kept me going. One was my wife's big toe, giving me some loving swift kicks. But the other was just the passion for the topic. Is really what caused me to work through all the times I wanted to quit, all the struggle, all the heartache that got me to the finish line, because without it, I don't think I would have done it.
I can see how that works. Even the small bit of a master's program or master's thesis that I worked on, we didn't do the actual research, but we did do all of the active research. But I had to do lots of research on the topic, and my topic was related to the generations in the workplace and the differences.
That is a fascinating topic.
It is so amazing. And initially going into that project, it was like, gosh, I got to write this 20-page paper, and I'm just so not ready to do such a long document. But once I got in, it was like, oh, now I'm going to find something else, because I became real passionate about all the differences among people. And that's one of my things, is that I like to see the differences in people and where their strengths come out and how they work together. And so then once I got in, I was like, oh, can I do more? Do we really have to stop now? Can we write a longer paper? And
Yeah. Well, especially in the workplace, I think the approach to work of boomers that they had for so long is very different, the mindset of millennials and Gen Z. And then, the Gen X, the generation that everybody forgets about.
Well, and you'd be surprised to know millennials and boomers have a lot in common.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So very good. When I think about passion, there's usually kind of three types of passion, especially kind of in our Called2B coaching process that we seek to focus on and help people to discover in themselves, is usually there are people passions. This is really answering the question, what people do I have, and there's supposed to be a T for our viewing audience, a heart for, issue passions, what issues or concerns do I feel strongly about? And then interest passions, what excites me the most? And by the way, I kind of look at passion as kind of a two-edged sword in a way. It's what gets you excited, what you have joy about, but it also can be the deep burdens and concerns of your heart. Now, Trish, I know you had a chance to kind of go through our little Called2B assessment tool to discover passion. What were some things, maybe 3 to 5, that especially came out of that for you around people, issue, or interests?
So it was interesting to look at the list and think about what are the things that get me excited. And right off the bat, college students, mentoring college students and helping them figure things out. I have a really great time with that. And then also looking at children. Children are super important to me. And I actually had an experience the other night where I met a young boy who just was so excited, and it did nothing but make my heart so happy to see how excited he was over a very small gift. And that kind of thing just really gets me excited. Enthusiasm is a great word to bring back into the conversation. And then business professionals, because that's my world. And I do a lot in that space. I'm really passionate about wanting to ensure that people are doing and getting all the things that they need to be successful, and trying to help people find that path. Yeah.
That's great. How about some issue passions? Anything that came up as far as kind of some issues of life?
So education is one, and I'm sure that's partly a statement of where I am in life with my own children, but wanting to see strong educational values in our community and availability of education for all, and that equality. And then also technology. I've always been an early adopter. I think, I don't know if you can inherit that kind of interest, but my dad was a very early adopter in technology back in the 80s. He had, a Radio Shack TRS-80 or whatever computer. And so I think that passion kind of transcended to me. And I loved early adoption of lots of things with technology. But I also want to see technology improve our lives, not make it harder or take over like social media has. So those are two things. And then I also checked off other, because this ties back to my interest in both college students and business professionals, is just career development. I have always, when I used to teach at the College of Charleston, my favorite thing was helping students figure out their career path, and working with them and seeing the different options laid out before them. And so having that opportunity there, and then also now with grown-ups who already have a job, that's a really fun thing to focus on. How do you make those things happen?
I have a real heart and passion for young people, and some of my most joyful coaching experience has been with young people trying to figure out what they want to do in life. And I think part of it is also comes out of our gifting. So for me, developer is one in my top 10 in my Clifton strengths. We'll talk about that again in our next podcast. But helping people grow, discover what they're here for. I mean, it really is, in a lot of ways, what we're about in the Called2B podcast is helping you understand how you're gifted, and the contribution that God has designed you for to make to the world, and then finding out what it looks like to start living that out in career choices.
Absolutely. Yep. And so with me, it's the individualization. And so I see people and I can see naturally what their talents are. Like it's a very strange thing, but I see the world like lots of little cookie cutters. Okay, they fit in this mold, they fit in this mold, and this is where their talents are. And it's nice to help people draw that out because sometimes they don't see it. Yeah.
And getting people, I believe, unfortunately we have this thing in the world that it's like Disneyland. If you can just dream it, it can come true. You can't be anything you want to be, but you can be who God has created and redeemed you to be. And if we can help people understand who they are and what that fit is that you talked about, that's a great way to bless people.
And helping them do that identification.
Yeah. How about interest passions? Any interests, hobbies that you're real passionate about?
Personal development and psychology jumped out. And I think looking back over life, that plays out. I started out as a psychology major in my undergrad, super interested in so many topics, fascinated with development and other topics related to how we change and grow over the lifespan. And really that comes into play. I went into a career in communications, which psychology plays into, and then went back and did another master's in psychology, again, restudying all of those things. I could sit and take psychology classes every day of the week. I love studying what makes people tick. Like, what are the things in the background that really help them define who they're going to be? How do experiences impact people? And what are those outcomes? So,
and that just tied into your recent master's program you just completed, right?
It did. Now it ties into my work as well. So finding that interest passion has really fueled a lot of my career interests as well. And then it ties back to, if we're going to pull it all together, my issue passions, going back to career development and education, and then my personal people passions, going back to those college students and early career folks. It all ties together.
Yeah. And so the discovery of what you're passionate about plays a big part in determining where you're supposed to work, where you're supposed to live, the impact you're supposed to make, your unique contribution in loving and serving your neighbor. Passion is not just important for somebody personally to discover their calling, but it also is important for any kind of group that wants to come together to make a larger impact beyond themselves. There's a great study that was just produced not too long ago from the Bono organization in a book called Better Together. And they found that 62% of practicing Christians who participated in a community group shared a strong passion for the cause with their fellow group members. And it's just this idea that, people come together around the things that they find enthusiasm about, they find joy about, they have a deep concern about, they have a passion for.
And we'll see this on our podcast with Solomon. My team is amazing because they all have a passion for helping people. They all have a passion for helping people going through difficult times, people who need that moment with God to feel his love and to begin that bridge towards healing. And every single person on Team Solomon has that passion. And we all come together and we are all so dedicated to the team and making sure that we are doing everything we can in the community. So we'll talk more about that next time.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that churches can do, but finding what is the deep burden or the great joy that gets you all excited and can be that common denominator to come together, that's where you're going to have probably some of the greatest impact. And I want to kind of close this conversation with a fun quote. This is a quote that comes from John Wesley. I almost wish we had the Rev Kev with us because I'm sure he would have had a very colorful, funny comment on this. But John Wesley once said, and kind of related to passion, he said, when you set yourself on fire, people love to come and see you burn. Now, we're not advocating in the Called2B podcast to set yourself on fire, literally. What we're talking is when you're filled with that enthusiasm, that passion, the things that God has put on your heart, it's attractive to people. And people want to be around that. People want to join in with that. And that's where you can make some of the greatest impact.
And think about people in your world who do that. Think about those teachers whose students don't want to miss the class.
Yeah.
You think about the doctors who are going to dedicate their time and give you that moment when you're there with them because they are so passionate about what they do. And it's not even just those professionals. I mean, we've talked in the past about our janitors and others. They're very passionate about making sure that they are providing that clean environment for students. And it's interesting because they often become the linchpin in the schools as well. My kids were talking about some of their favorite people in their schools. And it always comes back to the janitor.
That's interesting.
They're the ones who make the connections with the kids, and that's their passion. Their passion may not be just the facility. It may be being there for the students.
Yeah. And it can take something that would appear to many to be menial service, but because they've tied it to a passion of a desire to want to bless kids and help them in their development and growth process. It's something that fuels them and gives greater significance and meaning beyond. So, Trish, as we wrap up this Called2B podcast, this conversation on harnessing your passion, what should be a takeaway for our listening and viewing audience today?
Really, it's about stepping back and looking at your world and what are the things that get you excited? What do you have the most enthusiasm for? What are the things that will set you on fire, theoretically, so that you really want to go out and do things with them? What are the things that you do in your spare time? Maybe you have a job because that's the job that it provides for you or your family, but you have your outside interests that keep you busy outside of work. What are those things that really get you excited? And how can you then take them and do more with them?
Yeah. I heard one time, it's interesting, a person who worked for NASA, and they said, what do you do for a living? And he didn't mention his actual career. He says, I teach Sunday school, because he had a passion for kids. I mean, that was, while he was this rocket scientist, his passion was children, and it came forward.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it fueled him in other things that he did in life. Well, we want to thank all of you for being here. Thank you, Trish, for joining us once again. And to our listening and viewing audience, we hope and pray that this was a blessing to you, especially as you consider your passions in life. Perhaps you are somebody who you're not sure what your passion is. We want to encourage you to reach out to us at called2bpodcast@gmail.com if you'd like to take a little deeper dive. We got a fantastic assessment tool that could help you to better discern what your passions are and provide some coaching around that to help you think not only what is it, but how to live it out in life. Maybe you are somebody who have an idea of what your passions are. You just don't know how that translates in your daily callings of life or what you should do for a career. Again, we'd love to connect with you and maybe do some coaching around that topic. As always, we want to thank Malem and the Southeastern District for their generous gifts that make this podcast possible. And with that, we want to wish you all God's richest blessings, and we'll catch you next time for the Called2B Podcast. Take care, everybody.